For our next talk, we are going to have Corey Dodd is going to be speaking to us. Corey is a designer with a nerdy love of WordPress and over 25 years of experience under his belt. He's worked with some large design agencies, some big name brands, and those quirky little boutique studios you've probably never heard of. He's going to talk to us today about polishing the poop emoji, how to design beautiful websites from horrible logos. So let's thank Corey.
Hello. I don't know if you're tired after food, but I definitely am. All right, let's get this going. Oh, do I need this? All right.
Should be good to go.
So this is what I'm talking about today, polishing turds, how to design beautiful websites when you'd be given, I guess, crappy assets. And I'm going to talk about what that means, but essentially I'm going to be subjective about it. Now, I don't know if any of you have been in this situation. I certainly have, where you win a project or whatever and you're like, yes, and client's like, here's the logo, it's in Word. I've even had it where do you have an EPS or do you have a vector version, and they send you an Illustrator file and you open it up and it's a JPEG inside Illustrator or something like that, you know. Yay, not a good way to start. So hopefully that doesn't happen to you very often. You can't polish a turd, but you can roll it in glitter. I've never tried. Anyone had a go? Don't recommend, but yeah. I did want to just survey the room, so how are you? Who have we got? Hands up if you're a designer, if you classify yourself as a designer. Oh, it. Who's definitely a developer, like not a designer? We got a few, okay. Anyone in the middle? That's okay, yeah. So really, there's a lot for probably all of you in here. I'm trying to cover something that solve you a bit of a takeaway, but it's good to know, yeah, who's here? A bit about me, I don't think we care. I'm a designer, I've been doing it for a while, and I don't think it's important to the talk, but next thing. I've got some stuff to win. So anyone brave enough to just chuck out a number and guess how many poos in the talk? Come on.
17.
100. 100? 75. I'm going to have to work on an honesty system because I have no idea who did that. We'll keep going. Anyone else? 20? 20? 42. 40. No one's got the exact number, but we'll get the closest we'll win. So we'll have to remember. We'll work it out at the end. All right. I don't know if that changes anything, but there's going to be some in there. So first thing I want to talk about is what a bad logo is, or what a good logo is. Again, being subjective about it. I want to be subjective about it. A good logo, we would objectively say, is something that is memorable, it's distinct, it's simple, it's scalable, and it's appropriate. Appropriate's the main thing, right? Like, is it aligned with what the client's personality is, what's right for the market? So they're really, really important things. You could say that a bad logo is anything that's not the good things, but in the case of this scenario, I'm just talking about a logo that you don't like, because that's the tough part. When you're given a logo and you're like, I don't know how to work with this, like it's not, that I don't like it. So it might actually be some of those things, but it's hard for you to work with. So I'm not picking on any logos, but I've got a couple in here that I don't like. So what types of clients come to you that have bad logos? I've sort of worked out that to me there's three types of people that fall into the category of, you know, having bad logos. There's the good ones that when they come to you and they want to rebrand, or when you start talking about what their goals are, what they're trying to do, you know, what sort of personality they've got, like what they're trying to get from their market, what their goals are, they go, I think we maybe need to change that. And to what extent that is, you know, that's another conversation. So don't really need to cover that in this talk because then you don't have a bad logo to deal with. B, that's the people when they come to you and they have a pretty bad logo, or logo you can't work with, or are going to struggle to work with. But they care about design. They've asked you to make something that's really good. And the type of person that might often be someone that's been in business for like 20 years. Maybe they've got like vans, they've got uniforms, and they're not going to change it. Maybe they understand that it's not the perfect logo. Then you've got the people at the end that don't really care about design. They've got a bad logo. The talk's not really about these people either, because you don't need to design anything good for them. They don't care. They're not paying you for that extra time. They're not paying you to come up with something good. So it's almost not worth your effort in putting in extra time for those people. So it's mainly, this talk is focused on those people that are expecting something good, but their starting point is pretty bad. So what you really want to do at the start with, I guess, talking about logos or the impact and the changes you can make with logos is get some buy-in from the client. So you want to have a conversation. Again, I've sort of already mentioned it, but you have a conversation around what their goals are, what they're trying to achieve. You know, maybe you've done a discovery phase with them, talk about design brief, and you start to have a conversation around what things can we change. And look, it's a different case by case. Some clients are going to have style guides, some people are going to have absolutely nothing, and some will be a little bit more strict and some will be open to anything. So you've got to have that conversation, get on the same page, know what you're trying to achieve. So that's the first thing you want to do. There's a big question in how much stuff do you do for yourself, like without getting paid for it, and how much stuff do you know, how do you charge for that stuff? Look, for me, a lot of the time in the past, I have just done the extra work because I've wanted to make the stuff good. That has paid off for me over the years, focusing on design, getting better at design. It's helped me move into different spaces, going from, I guess, web design to moving into a branding space, and that's impacted my earning and my lead generation. So I have done a lot of that myself because I've wanted to make stuff better and better and help those businesses. But certainly, if you're working with those people that are classified in the B area and they are saying that they care about design, they will have bigger budgets because they're willing to pay for the design, if that makes sense, or better quality design. So this is the way that I would tackle this when I'm thinking about how to handle a logo, how to deal with a logo that's not great. So these are the steps that I would sort of go through. The first thing is really important, that's sort of to assess and understand what it is that you don't like about the logo, what's sort of bugging you. Define the personality, and by that I mean of the goals, what the client's trying to achieve, not the personality of the bad logo. Gather some inspiration, you know, what sort of things, pretty standard stuff like, I think then we get into ways to sort of deal with that logo. So pull the logo apart, make or take some shapes, get stuck into colour, play with type or distract. So, I'm actually really thirsty, but know what you hate about the logo. So take a look at the logo, that's the first thing. Take a look at it, work out what's wrong with it, and what things can you change. If you had that conversation with the client, have you got permission to change stuff? What things are they okay with? I'm going to pull up some examples. And I'm not picking on anyone here. Except these people, yeah. Now, these might not look terrible, right? You probably... And some of these aren't my clients. They're just ones that I found this morning when I was looking for some stuff. I'll admit it. Now, why would some of these be bad? And I'm going to use my own personal opinion on why I would struggle with them or why I struggled with some of them or what I've looked for. If we go to Cottage by the Sea up the top there, problem for that is the amount of colours. That's a real tough thing. Like, what's the hero there? What colours do we do? Do I have to use all of those colours? There's like 12 of them. I don't know. There's, well, not that many, but there's a lot. The second one, Anand. The typography's a little weird. It's a hard one to work with. So how do you handle working with typography when it's like quite distinctive and it has a really strong personality itself? Like, do you have to use that type throughout the stuff? Next one, Metcalf. To me, the worst thing about that is the tagline. Like, can you have the conversation about removing those things? Can you get rid of those things? Client might say, hey, we don't want to change our logo. The conversation then becomes that I'm not changing your logo, that still becomes a part of your logo. So if you go back to what a good logo is and you think of ideas of the scalable, you can use examples like, I don't know, anything like McDonald's, the big brands that you know, they don't have one logo. You're not actually changing their brand. You're keeping the logo elements the same, using those, and maybe you're just doing something like removing the tagline. It's not actually changing the logo. So some people would argue that it is. Pav Plumbing, again, another one where the typography is just got a lot of personality. I don't know if it's a good personality, but it's got a lot in there. The DDC, That's a great logo, but what's the problem there is that that type is going to be way too small. It's not scalable. So how do you deal with those sorts of things? Wall to wall, again, it's just I don't find some of those shapes look like they'll be easy to work with. So that's my thoughts on those logos there. Step 2 is to define that personality. So take some time, spend some time with the client, actually have that conversation, whether or not it's in, I guess, when you're having a design brief or in that discovery phase. It's always good to go to their goals and their market. So if you can understand their market and understand their goals, then when you're sort of trying to justify these things or say, I think I need to change this for X, Y, Z, you're not saying because I don't like it, you're trying to align it to them achieving their goals. Like you're talking about attracting these people, your stuff looks like not suitable for those people, and you want to elevate your brand, so let's just do these things. But yeah, if you understand the personality that they're going for, if their logo is dated but they want to look modern, if they're, if it's too quirky or it's not quirky enough, they want to add some sort of flavour to it. It's that. So what's the actual direction of where they wanted to head versus that current logo? So gather inspiration. You can do this with the client if you want. You can create like a mood board. You can even do a Pinterest board. The real lo-fi version of that is just to create a folder, swipe file, things that you like, put it into a folder when you're working and thinking about the project and the client. And I know this sounds like a lot of work, and that's why there was that conversation at the start about how much do you do without getting paid. You want to be getting paid for this stuff. But yeah, that's an example of a mood board. You can do that stuff with a client. It can really help them get on board with what you're trying to do and get aligned with everything. So pull the logo apart. So what I mean by that is to have an actual look at the logo and the things that you're working with. And when I say logo as well, this probably comes down to all their other brand assets, like if they've got marketing material. If you can look at them, if you can zoom into a logo, you might be able to find things that are interesting about it, things that work, that you might not have first noticed. Especially, we often look at something and go, I don't like it. So if you go back to one of the very first things and understand what it is that you don't like about it, it'll really help when you start to, I guess, really look at the logo. So that was an example of pulling the logo apart. Like, would I get away with this? I don't know. Maybe they're okay with that, but that's something that I would probably propose to them. If I had to have the name there, you don't have to have the name there, but if I did, I would try and make it in a way that would work next to that type rather than, and it was scaled to something that would work. But that's what I mean by pulling apart. And you might actually find in doing something like that, that there's some shapes in there that you could use and inspire for the rest of the layout and the stuff that you're trying to do. Okay, make or take some shapes. So that can mean a few things. You can obviously zoom in like on the logo and work out some of the parts that are working on it. Or you can introduce new things that are going to complement what you're trying to do, or complement the logo, sorry. And an example of that is, if I go back to this one, if you sort of look at the shape there and think about, hey, what's actually working there, that shape's really good. The actual base for their logo is good. And I don't think that's the worst logo. It really is that tagline that's bothering me. But yeah, you can see if you start to look at the shapes that are in the logo, what you could do with it. So that's something to consider. Get stuck in colour, into colour. This is a big one. A lot of people get, and clients, they get sort of scared of working with colour. They don't sort of push it. It works for me. That's the place that I will always go to first, keeping colour really vibrant. And there's situations where it might not feel appropriate. But when you lean into colour, you can actually often find some really good solutions. And yeah, you'll be surprised where it will take you. So an example with the colour, yoink, is this one. They had crazy colour palette. Now, I will say, I've had to go back a couple of years to get, like 5 years to find projects where I was getting really bad logos, and this probably isn't the worst, and neither of the examples, but yeah, if you look at this, the colour there, I've kind of focused on what is a hero colour, what's actually sort of strong, rather than trying to work in the reds and those things. And I've just used some highlights there. And that, to me, that's a good use of the colour. I've also changed the logo. I've got rid of the tagline, and I've got rid of the location, and I put it all on one line. Makes it scalable. They weren't using the logo like that beforehand, and they use it all the time like that now. So, yep. Play with some type. So the fonts don't need to match the logo. Like a lot of people they'll get given something that's got cursive font and they'll spend hours trying to find something that's the same or very similar that's going to pass off at the same. It's not the best way to handle that. I actually think that logos should be treated as their own thing, and then the typography, you shouldn't generally use the same type. When you're creating a style guide for a brand, you would look at what typography works with that brand rather than going like, just always use the same the font as what I have for the logo. A lot of reasons for that. One is if you have a specific typeface and then you just start using that for all your words, and everything looks like your logo. So they'll notice it when you start typing your business name, and then use other words along with it. They're like, all of those now look like your logo. So it's good to actually just play with type and not actually feel like you need to match the stuff that is there. A real good trick with that is to find something that contrasts against the logo and the stuff that you don't like, rather than going, okay, I need to find something that's the same as that, go against the grain a little bit. And also remember that type has personality. And yeah, sure, I don't need to go into like what typefaces mean, like, you know, fall into separate categories, but if you look at a typeface, what does it sort of say to you? How does it feel? If you look at something, people will say, oh, that's a serif font, that's dated, but you can look at some serif fonts and go, oh, that's really, really modern. So why does that happen? It's because of the shapes and the spacing in there. You don't need to know why, but if you look at that and you go, that looks modern, even though it's an older type style, then it's got a modern personality. So try and look at fonts when you're doing this stuff and work out what personality you're going for, and then you think back to the type of goal, what you're trying to do with the client, and find typefaces that sort of fit in with that. And I do have an example where, in a minute, where I've got a typeface that sort of complements someone's weird stuff that they had going on. So if all else fails, distract. So you can do a lot of things where you introduce new elements into a design that weren't there. You can use things like minimalism, even animation, just something that takes the attention away from the things that you might have seen that were hard to deal with in the logo. So yeah, whatever you can do that's going to draw some of that attention away, try it out. So I've got a couple of examples of like more in-depth projects. Again, this is sort of going back a little while. This here, what I don't like about this logo, why I felt like I was going to struggle with the logo, is the colour palette. Now, the colour palette was important to them. It's because of their connection with the Indigenous community, and that's where those colours have come from. It was a big part of their story. The thing with it is they were trying to present themselves in a way that was light and bright. They're a childcare centre, and the other example that I have is a childcare centre. I think there's a theme with bad logos. But they, obviously, it seems like a dark and oppressive colour. So there you can see that the old stuff that people have done, so you realise that they're not the examples of how I dealt with they're previous examples. So what they've tried to do is like, how can I, again, that's almost a distract thing. How can I distract from having, the dark? So they've tried to move it. Here they've reversed it. They did have a reverse colour of the logo, but black was a big part of it, their brand. If you go and look at their signage, it's black. If you go into their actual centres, they've got the black, they've got in the Indigenous, they've got scenes that are based around Indigenous art. It's really important to them. So I don't think moving away from black was a good idea. So I've sort of doubled down into black. Oh, and the other thing with that is looking at some of those shapes, what do they say to me? What are they trying to achieve? So to me, they're trying to capture something that's playful. And I've used the colours really boldly and really dark, and then try to extend those elements, bring in some of that stuff, like add new shapes, but that capture that playfulness that was on the tree. Again, I've made that a landscape version, which they didn't have before, and they were totally fine with. And with something like that, like for me anyway, maybe not everyone's in the same boat. If you're a developer, that's literally opening the program. I could do that in the same thing that I'm designing, the website itself. So it's not a big deal. I would do that on the fly and present that back in a conversation of like, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm representing your brand, and extending that. So I don't go to them and go, hey, I'm going to do this to your logo, is that okay? I tell them back on the bigger picture and say, see how this does all those things that we're trying to achieve, X, Y, Z, and position you in a certain way. So, all right, and I've got another example. Oh no, there's some of the extended stuff of how that's used. Hard to see, but there's a little sort of booklet there. You go back, that's the original one that they had set up. They weren't even using, they had great photos and all sorts of stuff, but people didn't have the confidence to go, let's use the dark colours, let's use the shapes and sort of dig into it. Oh, also, this is a good example where the typography, that was what I wanted to mention here. That all day long type, if I tried to use that actually for headings and stuff, you wouldn't be able to read it, so that's the problem. Doesn't really matter with a logo, contrary to what most people believe. You don't need to be able to read logos, you just need to be able to recognise them. So it doesn't matter that it's in the logo and it might be hard to read, but if you had that for headings and stuff, it's going to look terrible and it's going to be hard to read. So I've gone with something that, again, what's the vibe I'm going with? It's got to be playful, it's got to be a bit of fun, and believe it or not, that's why fonts like Comic Sans got popular and then everyone hated on them. But that's what I was trying to capture, something that's a bit of playful fun. All right, again, this is not the worst logo in the world. Some of the things that were challenging with this, almost mirroring the same conversation I just had, they had a good style guide and they had elements in their style guide that they weren't even confident to use. They'd used them in the past and they just didn't think that they were working for them. One of those things is the colour as well. When I sat down with them, I said, oh, you know, we went through their brand style guide, and I said to them, what's wrong with your purple? What's wrong with your green? Like, why are you not using them? They're too bold. Like, everything will be dark. We've done it before. This washed out stuff, it sounds like a good way to combat that. But really what you've ended up with something that's really sort of insipid and doesn't have a lot of punch. Also, they've got all these brand assets. They had pages of these icons and stuff that were part of their style guide. Couldn't find them anywhere, not in their marketing material or anything. So they weren't going to pay me for a rebrand. They had this stuff, they got 30, 40 locations. They're not going to get their logo redone. So I'm like, well, I can use those things and look at invigorating that stuff using the same things that were in there. And they 100% didn't want to use the solid purple. And then when they saw this, how I was using this, they really started to change their mind. After this website was launched, I was working with the marketing team in this process. But after the website was launched, the CEO got to see it finally and he went, how come all of our marketing material looks like shit and this stuff looks so good? What's happened? And they went, that's because we do the marketing material internally and we paid someone else to do that. So I essentially got to redo their style guide within the scope of their logo. So I reimagined what their style guide looked like and it led to me doing templates for them and loads of other work. So the knock-on effect of sort of taking the time and doing that stuff can sometimes be really big. What you're actually doing here is you're keeping someone's logo the same, but you're actually rebranding them. So it's, you know, people think about rebrand as in like, I'm just going to change the logo and that's the brand part. But no, it's actually the way that it's used. It's the way that you present everything in the logo and how that's sort of extended out. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to achieve, and that actually really helps me get other work, and it's a big benefit for me. So I think I'm coming up near the end. I've got loads of time left, don't I? I'll do a dance. Yeah, so when you've got bad assets at the start, if you're worried about it, don't look at it as a bad thing. There's ways to deal with it. It is worth spending the time to, I guess, consider design more, to learn how to have a good conversation with your client, to work out what their goals are and know how to sort of, you know, tell them what you think you're going to do and how the things that you've done align with the goals that they have had at the start. Yeah, it's a chance to push back. It's a chance to push your creativity. I've got some more poos. I think that was 43 on both of those pages. So, so how many turds were there? Does anyone want to? 200. All right. So is everyone going to be cool to know what they said? Because it was only 112, but I think that's still a lot of poo. Who got closest? Did anyone say? I don't think anyone said 100. I said 100. 100? Well. I said 112. Oh yeah, Jeremy, mate. Well, whoever said 100, you can. Do you want me to bring this up now? Or that'd be awkward. But it's just that stuff that it's some stuff. Anyway. Hey, Jeremy, you can have the booby prize for lying, which is just you just don't get you just don't get the mug. Yeah. I thought you were going to show me how to do that. Anyway, I think that's my talk. Hey.
Well, thank you, Corey.
And I've got stickers. If anyone wants some stickers, you can come up and bug me.
Yeah, I'll totally.
I was going to say as well, if you want to find me on social media or contact me, you can't, so don't.
All right. Thank you, Corey. That was very, very enjoyable. Not too bad at all. We've got plenty of time for questions, so if you've got a question, raise your hand. Please wait till you get a mic, because if you do that, then we get it on the recording.
It'll take longer as well. We've got ages.
Yeah, that's right. It helps kill some time.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yep.
But if you've got any questions, I'm sure Corey would be happy to answer a couple.
Maybe. No, yes, I will.
And if you don't, we can bask in the glory of this final slide for a little longer.
We could leave early. Is there a break after this? Because we could go raid the line of food before.
We need to come more over this way, though.
Hey, have you ever dealt with a situation where a client's only recently redesigned their logo and it's worse than what it was before?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's the same thing. Like the reality in this situation is that it's the people that aren't going to change their logo, but you know that it's not great. Like that's happened, and you go, there was actually something in your logo before, and it could have been really good. You've totally rebranded, and now it's weird. You've probably missed out on the I guess, equity that was in your brand already. And then they do these weird rebrands, but you still just treat it the same way. If you go back and say, well, what are we trying to achieve here? Who are you trying to market to? How do they perceive you? You know, how do we want to look and feel? How do we want to position that stuff? How position your business? And then you just do the best that you can. But again, if someone's got a new logo, I think there's a lot of opportunity then to be the person that extends that stuff across the whole board and starts to take control and win more work from them for doing, you know, internal documents or whatever. Like, whatever. If there's other things that you're into as a designer, social media or whatever, it's like that might lead you to doing all of their, you know, profile stuff and winning ongoing work with them. So, yeah, it's actually kind of cool when it's a new logo. It's terrible, but it's kind of cool. There's an opportunity there. Yeah.
Got another question just in.
And there's. Slow down.
Hello. Great talk. Thank you so much.
That's all right.
Talk about poo, so interesting. Can you give me a little bit of insight in designing for vision impairment from your point of view for contrast, colouring, that type of thing?
Sure.
Come over this way while you're being in the camera shot.
So I think that's about appropriateness. And look, there's conversations around accessibility. I'm sure you've probably been to some of those talks if that's your interest. I'm going to be really controversial here and say that I love accessibility. I love the concept around it. I don't think that everyone should be forced into doing their website. It needs to be accessible like they are doing in other countries, purely for the reason that what we're doing here is we're potentially reducing some of what the things that you can do. The world's not accessible. I mean, I've got an office that some people wouldn't even be able to get into. Some people would struggle in this space. So, you know, until the world's accessible, I don't think it's fair that websites are taking all the brunt on that stuff. But if you're working with someone where you do have accessibility and that's important, then 100%. There, you know, I can see some people getting annoyed at that, but that's my hot take. That's yeah. Look, there's things that we have all around us every day in the real world, and they're not accessible. Yeah, they're not getting a lot of pressure to be changed, and I don't think some of those things can be changed. So I think, yeah, I'm going to talk myself into trouble here. So thanks for getting me in trouble.
Thanks for being honest.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks so much for the good talk. You talked before about how branding is not just the logo, it's the whole look of everything.
Yep.
Branding is also the words.
Of course,
so
yeah.
I'm wondering, like, how do you approach working with clients
to maybe spruce up shit content as well, or like the words?
Yeah.
And how, like, just curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's probably a whole nother talk. I could probably do that in about 10 minutes too, like this one. Yeah, it's probably, well, that's definitely around like what you're getting paid for and what the project is. So if I'm doing something that is a branding project, this talk's, I guess, specifically aimed at, the WordPress community and someone that's getting sort of paid to do a website and what you can do in there. And a lot of that's going to be visual. Some of that, depending on your angle, like if you've got a copy angle and that's the stuff you're winning work from and that you're going to lead with that stuff. If I'm working with a client and it's a full branding process, then you're going back to like, tone of voice and that sort of stuff. Could you include that in a website project? 100%. You charge more for it, and if someone's actually attracted to that as a service, that's just more in that project for you. So, yeah, like go for it. But it wasn't part of the talk, but it's definitely 100% aligned with how brands are perceived, how we position them, and that's something that I personally, in that thing of like how far do you go and what stuff you do for free. That's some of that stuff where even in mock-ups and early concepts and stuff, where I'm not doing the content, I'm still working out the structure of what's going to have, make the story work the best. And then I'm doing some early stuff around like what the headings sound like to tell them like what the language is. And I go, this might not be the perfect language, but it shows you the type of things that we've talked around about your personality. So I kind of do that even in the website projects anyway. But yeah, if you can get charged for it and make it a part of the project, make a better case study and stuff like that as well. Yeah.
Got any other questions? We do. I'll go this way.
If it just don't be about accessibility, because I'll get into more trouble. A bit awkward.
On accessibility. Well, we won't. How do you deal with a client that thinks that they're a designer?
I probably wouldn't work with them. Yeah, I probably wouldn't work with them. No, look, I'm working with a team at the moment, a architecture firm in Sydney, and I'm not from Sydney. Anyway, I'm working with them at the moment, and they are creatives. I've had to just double down on some of that stuff, like really going back to the goals. Look, I will push back, and that's a part of what I will say to people in the early conversations around, if we're a good fit for each other. When you're sort of doing that dance at the start about a prospect. That actually works for me. Like some people will particularly go, oh, we want to be told. If they don't want to be told and they're going to tell me, I can't win that fight and I don't want to have that fight. So if they're open to it, I'll fight them till the end and then they'll be grateful for it. But I know it sounds a bit arrogant, but yeah, if someone thinks that they're a designer, I'd talk about that up front and what that means and see if they're going to be problematic. And if they are, I'll just bail. I don't have time to work with people that don't want to do. Yes, that's right. Life's too short.
I'm looking for any other hands at the moment. If not, I have a question, so I'll just throw that in. Corey, you make heaps of really bold, you could call it brave, kind of choices in terms of colour and character in your type and big bold shapes. For someone who's not done that a lot yet but could see the benefit of it, like how would you recommend, and isn't quite confident with pitching that to the client, how would you recommend like starting to experiment with that and
that's
building
a cool
that confidence, and when is the time to like tell them they want hot pink and fluoro green?
I've been there. Sometimes it works really well. So I would say, if that's a bigger question around how do you get better at design almost, there's a few things to do. One is to start to say, I think I like design, start to notice it, and do some of those same things. When you see good design and go, I like that, like rather than, sometimes we see like a bad logo and go, I don't like it, and then that's it. And we go, I don't really want to work with this. And sometimes we see stuff and we go, I really like that, and we don't know what it is. So if you actually start to pay attention to those things and go like, well, what's working there? Why do I like that thing, and then not those two things? Start to develop your own sort of taste and your own sort of palette around that stuff. And then start doing some work. So, you can always do your own projects if you really wanted to, but I would just try and put more of the time into it. And look, you can copy stuff. Like I'm not telling people to go out and rip off like stuff that exists, but like it's not the first, skull that you've seen as a logo or whatever. So, it's not like you have to reinvent the wheel every time. I use circles in 50% of my my designs. Like, it's okay. Yeah, if you were to go put a circle in your websites and some weird clouds on your next slides, that's okay. As long as you don't go to my stuff and steal it directly, and that's a bit weird. But yeah, it's okay to get inspired by stuff and to look at stuff and try it out. So I don't know if that helps.
That's great. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, we might say once again, thank Corey. Thank you very